Welcome to Keystone Cold Cases, a podcast that aims to reignite cold cases across Pennsylvania. We are here to bring attention to the stories that have faded into the background, honoring the victims and their families along the way. Each episode is a step closer to understanding the truth, because every case deserves more than just a passing glance, and every voice deserves to be heard.
Good afternoon. My name is Chelsea, and today I'm joined with Shannon. How are you doing today?
I am good. I am, no lie, enjoying the snow, even though I'm not going anywhere in it. So that's probably why I can enjoy it. But I think it just looks really pretty. And I don't know, maybe it's a mental thing. I feel like with the snow, the air feels like is so much cleaner. Like I actually will stick my head out and just take deep breaths of the cold air.
I think I agree with you. I like it when I don't have anywhere to be.
Mhm.
If I have somewhere to be, I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to that glorious age where my son is almost 15 and he wants to shovel everything to earn money. And I don't have to do anything.
Love it.
Yep. Oh, yes. It's like one of the only perks of having a teen because all the other ones, not so fun. But just a little bit of housekeeping. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at KCC Pod. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Keystone Cold Cases. We are releasing current episodes now on YouTube every Friday afternoon, and we are also in the process of releasing our older episodes. Don't forget to like or subscribe to all of our social media pages. We love hearing your thoughts on each case, so don't be shy. Drop a comment, send us a message at keystonecoldcases@gmail.com. Or please share the episode with a friend, someone who might love true crime just as much as you do. Your engagement really helps us grow and reach more listeners. Keep an eye out because we will be hosting a live episode on April 3rd in the evening. We'll be putting more information out there as we get closer. A quick reminder that we do our best to research every case thoroughly and share our sources at kccpod.com. That said, we can't take responsibility for any errors or inaccuracies in original materials we reference. With all that behind us, we're going to focus on a case that takes us to Percy, Pennsylvania, which is located in southeast Pennsylvania in Bucks County and part of the greater Philadelphia metropolitan area. The borough sits near the Delaware River and borders New Jersey. The name Percy comes from a Lenape Unami phrase that translates to one who goes to the place to crack nuts. And this is according to Percy Live and on their webpage. While small, this town has seen significant change over the years. Percy was incorporated in May of 1879 with just 68 residents. Today, that number has grown to more than 9,300 and is continually rising due to all the developmental expansions that are happening. And we have one of the ladies on the podcast that live in Percy, and we went up to visit her for our Christmas party. And man, so many developments are just in the process of being started or being built right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of growth in this state. It's like, oh, here's a piece of land. Let's throw up some, overpriced cookie cutter houses.
Yes, I was kind of surprised because when I'm thinking Percy, I'm thinking kind of like farmland and agricultural. So when we were driving through, even though it was at night, it was very apparent how much it's getting built.
Yeah.
Percy was once known for producing millions of baseballs for Major League Baseball, but now it is recognized for its walkable downtown filled with restaurants, breweries, boutique shops, and a seemingly endless calendar of community events. It's a tight-knit town where participation is everything and the sense of community is undeniable. Percy is also home to the oldest tree lighting ceremony in the United States, adding to its reputation as the definition of small town charm, rich history, and civic pride. You might remember us visiting this town before. We covered the Percy train tunnel during our spooky season earlier this year, so it might sound a little bit familiar. Our case takes us back decades. On February 13th, 1959, Mabel Kretshmar stepped out of her home and into brutal winter weather. Archived temperatures from nearby towns show the day never climbed above freezing. There was a light snow, which eventually turned to a cold, miserable rain. It was the kind of night that kept most people indoors, but Mabel was deeply devoted. Nothing was going to stop her from attending Friday evening prayer services at her church. According to an article in the New Jersey Herald, Mabel put on her green overcoat and matching hat to brave the harsh weather. She was going to need them because her church, St. Andrew's United Church of Christ, was a full mile away. Now that is dedication. At her age, in those conditions, and with that distance, I would have found absolutely any excuse not to leave the house.
You and me both. I find any excuse now, cold weather or not.
Oh, yeah. I mean, oh, yeah. And
COVID ruined me.
Well, thinking this is a long time ago. We're talking 59. I'm sure there was no snow blowers helping to think about the public sidewalks maybe not being cleared and having an older woman traverse down it a mile one way and back at night.
Yes. And probably in like her Sunday best too, because like back then, like churches had like dress codes and, and most people, like, or most women, I think back then would be in their dresses and their heels, like not in pants. But I mean, I could be wrong, but it was just kind of like a, quote unquote, as we say all the time, it was a different time. And, even when I was growing up, in the 70s and 80s, like you dressed for church. Damn the weather, you dressed for church.
Oh, yes. I grew up with very religious grandparents, and I would be chewed out if I thought about wearing anything but my quote-unquote Sunday best.
Yep.
And you could only wear it for church, so I get it totally.
Yeah.
I think it's funny. We have already mentioned it. As I was writing this and like finishing this yesterday, and even as we're recording today, it's snowing now. And I could tell you, I'm not going anywhere. Not on foot, not even in car.
Same. All my stuff was canceled, so I am in. I might not even get out of my pajamas.
I will say I have gotten out of my pajamas. It feels like I'm more motivated if I'm dressed to go.
Yeah, very true.
So, as Mabel made her way through the cold, she unknowingly crossed paths with a monster. She was unaware that when she stepped out of her house, she was being carefully watched. Near the intersection of Walnut Street and Constitution Avenue, she was attacked. And this was approximately, like, rough estimate, police put it at 7:15 to 7:30 p.m. And the perpetrator's goal was robbery, but the assault was savage. Mabel was 59 years old and no match for the violence inflicted on her. She was dragged off into a muddy area away from the public eye. We're talking like a couple dozen yards away. She was beaten so severely that every rib on her left side of her body was broken, and the attacker left her, battered and bruised, in the snow, not knowing if she was going to survive or not. But when he left, she was alive. Now, Mabel was tenacious. She didn't go quietly during the attack. She fought back to some extent. Why? Because in the struggle of being dragged from the sidewalk to this secluded area, she lost her shoes, she lost her hat, and her glasses. She wasn't going to go easily. And she didn't lose her will to survive. I learned that Mabel had spent most of her adult life in Philadelphia. And if you know anything about women from Philly, you know they're tough. They have grit. Even at 59 years old, Mabel wasn't going to sit there helplessly and let someone take her life.
think we talked on a previous case or a monthly mood, like about the importance of fighting back if you're able, because many perpetrators will not want to be bothered with a victim that has that kind of tenacity, especially if they're just trying to grab something like quick, you know, like a quick robbery, like watch, purse, something that they just want to get rid of and sell for a quick buck.
And maybe this assault could have been worse if Mabel hadn't fought back, that if he thought that she would just give in. Not really sure.
Yeah.
Barefoot and gravely injured, she somehow managed to walk more than 300 feet through the snow to a gas station at 3rd and Walnut. And she was met by police because a passerby who was driving along the road had noticed her covered in mud and blood. And obviously they knew something was wrong. So they called the police, and the police responded fairly fast because as Mabel was reaching the gas station, they were already there. And on the outside, Mabel didn't really seem to have that many injuries. Nothing really seemed wrong. She was coherent. She was talking to them. They were interviewing her. But as they were questioning her, it became clear something was terribly wrong. Mabel was rapidly declining. She kept telling the officers that her head and chest hurt, and she had told them specifically that this perpetrator used his knees to like crush in her chest and kneeing her in the head. Only then did officers decide to rush her to Grandview Hospital, and that was after convincing her to go. Because when Mabel got up to walk, it wasn't so much to find help, but she was like attempting to walk back home, and the police had to convince her to even go to the hospital. And I don't know if that's because like nowadays you have to damn near be dying before you're going to a hospital. I'm sure it was probably different, but I feel like in the old times people always like it's not as bad as it looks or something like that. They're just so tough and so stubborn.
I agree. I was thinking the same thing.
So when she did get to the hospitals, doctors soon discovered the extent of her injuries. Mabel had suffered massive internal trauma, including a lacerated liver, and it raises difficult questions. Given the severity of her condition, why wasn't an ambulance called immediately? How much time was lost while she was being interviewed instead of receiving medical care? In cases like this, minutes can mean the difference between life and death. Could adrenaline have been what kept Mabel going? It's possible she didn't immediately feel or fully grasp the severity of her injuries. In moments of extreme trauma, adrenaline can temporarily mask pain and push the body into a survival mode. That surge may have given Mabel just enough strength to escape her attacker and focus on one thing: finding help. According to health grades, adrenaline can remain in the body for up to an hour before its effects fully wear off, though that window varies from person to person. When you consider everything Mabel endured, staggering barefoot, ending up at a gas station, being questioned, taking the police back to the scene, that timeline could very well have spanned close to an hour when she started to decline. Mabel passed away the following day on February 14th, 1959. Once the case shifted from a burglary to a homicide, the Percy Police Department immediately partnered with the Pennsylvania State Police. That same day, investigators returned to the area where Mabel had been attacked, searching for anything that might point them toward her assailant. What they found were footprints, and those footprints told a story. According to the Percy Borough Police Department, the impressions revealed a distinctive stride. The left foot turned outward in the gait, and the steps themselves were long, suggesting the perpetrator may have been a tall individual. During her interview with police, Mabel was able to tell police it was a male. One detail, however, stands out, to me at least. Investigators describe the stride as a quote-unquote country boy stride. And I'll be honest, I have never heard that term before. I tried looking it up and I just couldn't find like a clear definition or explanation of what that actually means or what it's supposed to imply. So, I have to ask, do any of you know what that term means?
I certainly don't know what it means, but my guess is that maybe it was a wider stance. So, like, the footprints were further apart than, if they were, just walking regular, there's probably a few inches between the footsteps, like where they land. Maybe it was a little wider. Like maybe someone that had spent a lot of time on horseback, like bow-legged, if you will.
Yeah. They specifically said in an article that he kicked his left leg out. So maybe, I'm not really sure, but it seemed that the left foot was the one with like the strange gait to it.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it could have been an injury too or something.
That's another possibility, I think. Mabel passed away in the wee hours of Saturday, and by first light, Percy firefighters were called in to help canvass the area. They worked throughout the day Saturday and then returned again on Sunday. Police also requested assistance from the Telford diving unit, sending divers into the creek in hopes of recovering evidence from the crime, specifically Mabel's missing purse. And she did tell authorities that she had $30 in her purse, which, I mean, we're talking about $30 to us. That is not worth robbing someone. But back then, that was a decent amount of money.
Oh, sure.
Though I'm not really sure why she was targeted, if it was because she was older and he thought that maybe she wanted to put up a fight. But how would he know that she had that money? I don't know. She just looked fancy. I'm not really sure.
The level of brutality seems like maybe it could have been personal too, but unless it was just because she did try to fight back, so maybe that just angered him and that he took that anger out on her.
That could have been true too. Now, despite the manpower and exhaustive searches on land and in the water, investigators were unable to uncover any additional clues. No witnesses immediately came forward who actually saw the attack. However, after the weekend, 2 separate people did report seeing a young man lingering in the area around the time of the incident. One even said he saw this man trailing Mabel. Investigators spoke with both the individuals, and they both had very similar descriptions of this male. So they used it to create a sketch. Even if this person wasn't the attacker, police believed he might have seen or heard something that could help move the case forward. And the one person who watched him trail Mabel said that he had a weird gait as well. So that's why those steps meant more.
Interesting. And just my opinion, but if somebody's hanging outside in those frigid temperatures, they're probably to no good anyway. Like,
probably, because what are you doing?
Yeah. Like even in the snow, I was like, why are people at the park? It's still snowing. It's cold and snowing. I mean, like, so, and clearly this weekend is not as cold as it was the night Mabel was attacked. So just random thoughts from my brain.
No, I get it. Adding concern to the case, a 16-year-old girl had been attacked just a few weeks earlier. Police began to wonder whether the 2 incidents might have been connected, though they never were able to decisively make that connection. And the sketch was published in local newspapers, but despite the publicity, it failed to generate any meaningful leads, and we will have it on our website, the sketch that went out in the local newspapers. The local VFW post 245 in Sellersville offered a $100 reward for any tips. Again, that might not sound like a lot of money, but adjusted for inflation over 67 years, it's roughly $1,113, and that's a significant amount of money at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was also strange that the reward was only offered until March 16th, 1959, which was only a month. It gave a month for anyone to, come forward. And I think it's strange because back then we did not have instant news. Newspapers had to get published and then pushed. And for someone not knowing that a crime had happened, but were maybe in the area and saw something unusual, but didn't think that they had to report it, I just felt like it didn't give enough time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So I never really saw a reward that had like a time limit, I guess. I mean, I do know over time, like, I guess funds get reallocated to other things, but I thought it was strange. The VFW sponsored this reward because Mabel was a widow of a veteran. And still, despite this incentive, which is another good amount of money, the reward didn't produce any leads and the case remained frustratingly cold. A viewing for the family was held on Monday, February 16th, attended by relatives, and approximately 100 people attended. I think the detective at the time was very happy that, like, people who wanted to be onlookers or be like in on it didn't come and ruin that for them. But again, I think it's a different time. But it was brought up in the news article that he was relieved that they didn't have to like push people out for being rude or whatever. Mabel was laid to rest the following day on February 17th. Brenner Funeral Home in Percy handled the arrangements. It's somewhat surprising that more members of the community didn't come out to support her or the family, in my opinion, though. Mabel was born and raised in Percy. She was the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Elmer Weichel. Her father served as the town street commissioner, and she grew up alongside several siblings and half-siblings. As a young adult, Mabel married and moved to Philadelphia. After her husband passed away, she returned to her hometown in 57, living quietly in a small apartment. And gosh, I wish I wrote down what it was, but it wasn't like a typical apartment like we have nowadays. It's like when someone owns like the house and they called it something, but the rooms were for rent. But it was specific to that time. I forget the wording
like
that they used.
A boarding house?
Yes, like that. So she had her small little quarters that were private to her, and she was surviving on her husband's pension from the military.
So this might be a little bit far-fetched, but since this was such a small town, I'm wondering if like the perpetrator was someone known to residents or maybe feared in the community to the point that no one like really wanted to be involved. I don't think that it's necessarily the case, but it was just something that I was thinking about because the case just has gone nowhere. But I mean, I would think that if that was the case at some point in the last, 60 years, somebody would have come out and said something about it.
When I read about it, this is a very old case. Most of the people that were alive at that time are no longer. But what I have been able to pick up from like residents who have maybe come across it in doing research into other things within Percy, it was rumored to be they believed it was someone from out of town because the Saturday after the murder, there were two big basketball games. Now, I think they were like big for like the high school, and they actually took the two quote unquote witnesses that saw this man lingering to the basketball game to keep their eyes open to see if they saw the perpetrator there.
Okay.
Though I would assume it would be kind of hard because, as we know, it was cold, and they both gave description of him like wearing a cap, being pretty bundled. So I'm sure it's different looking at somebody who's bundled and looking at somebody like at a basketball game, if you will.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the sketch that you provided, and he's kind of got like a distinct nose from this in this picture. Hang on, let me zoom in on it.
It is not the best picture. I will like give everyone a warning. I mean, this was in a newspaper. We're talking almost 70 years ago, so I tried to give the best like resolution, but it's not the best.
Yeah, but it looks like, I'm at 200% right now on the on the zoom in, and it looks like he's got like a broad nose. So that's,
Okay.
To me, like that's the first thing that jumped out when I first looked at this. So, clothing aside, and who knows, maybe the cap on his head, kind of changes like the shape of his head and it might appear different. But that's just the first thing that jumped out at me when I looked at that picture was the nose in the sketch.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it could be either or. We see these stories all the time. Someone just passing by, or it could be your neighbor, basically.
Yeah.
So, the first 6 weeks after Mabel's death, authorities conducted dozens of interviews. We're talking about like 120 to 140. At one point, they were just bringing in random men. There's like no rhyme or reason. Obviously, the technology that they had to use back then, vastly different from what they have today. And they just wanted to try to connect somebody. They spent countless of hours trying to determine who could have committed such a brutal crime. At that time, in 59, it was the most extensive case that they had put manpowers on between the state police and the local police. And they were just coming up empty-handed. Despite their efforts, no solid leads ever emerged, and the case slowly went cold. By the time this episode is released, we will have just passed the 67th anniversary of Mabel's death, a sombering reminder of how long justice has been out of reach for that family. In 1961, a senior from Penridge High School was cleaning out a drainage ditch along a creek in the area when he stumbled across a partially buried purse. It was a dark leather bag, strikingly similar to the one Mabel described that she had carrying the night of her attack. And all the kids knew about Mabel's death. Apparently, that incident, parents would warn their kids, don't go out or you'll end up like Mrs. Kretshmar. So obviously he knew about it and he immediately handed it over to the police. But despite the resemblance, investigators were never able to confirm whether it actually belonged to Mabel or not. In 2017, police renewed their plea to the public, urging anyone with information to come forward. And I think it's funny how it kind of got pushed into the media. I mentioned it before, but there was someone that worked, I think, within like the local position of Percy that was doing, I guess, research on one of the bridges there, and it brought up the murder because Mabel crossed it, and right after crossing this bridge, she was attacked, and he had never heard of it, and he'd been living there for a while, and he started, looking and seeing that it was still a cold case and all that information, and he single-handedly put so much pressure to get them to kind of take a second glance at it, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in 2017 that he started to ask them to look into it. So on the Percy Borough Police Department's Crime Watch page, they wrote, quote, "It is entirely possible that people in our community have some knowledge about this case that they feel is minor, or that they think the police probably already have. Call us anyway to go over what you know. Perhaps the attacker has shared some details of this case with other people who have been afraid to talk for all these years. Perhaps the attacker is still alive and feels some degree of remorse for the crime. If so, it's time for you to make this right and sit down to talk with us. Mabel deserves justice, and you may need to relieve your conscience." End quote. So those words, still echo because someone out there knows something and Mabel is still waiting for justice. I mean, 2017, that's like 9 years ago, and I haven't seen any more information come out. There was a couple articles, when they said that they were going to look into it and when they updated their page, but like nothing since. According to a New Jersey Herald article, Percy Police Chief Stephen Hillius, who spoke in 2017, acknowledged that there's only a very slim chance this case will ever be solved. After all, the crime occurred 67 years ago. Anyone involved would likely be at least 82. So I say at least 82 because, I'm pretty sure a 15-year-old didn't commit this crime, but never say never. But I'm thinking it's probably like 20 years or older. So like this person could be 87 years or plus. Like we don't really know, but they're old. That's basically the point. And it's another entire possibility that this perpetrator is not even alive anymore.
Yeah, and it doesn't appear that Mabel really had anyone to advocate for her and keep her case in the public eye all those years. I mean, she didn't have any children, and I know you mentioned siblings, but
Well, you want to know what I think it was? I think it comes down to the family believing the police were doing their jobs and they didn't want to interfere or step on toes. And I bring this up because you and I worked on a case, and I can't remember the family's name, but they wanted us to help them with their father's case because they were being told that the case was looking into. They were being told that it was like an active investigation for years, if not decades.
right.
And finally, the police stopped talking to them and they were desperate. They thought the police were doing their job, doing their due diligence, and then they were almost alienated and they were just baffled. And I really think that back then it was a total different time. When people said they were doing their job, that's what you took it at face
Right.
value. They were doing their job.
Right. I don't think, police departments were as kind of like political as they are these days, where, there's a lot of bureaucracy and red tape these days too that kind of also ties their hands.
Yeah. I just think there were different expectations and societal rules, if you will, and it was very clear that she had an extended family and community that knew her. So it would be strange, like nowadays, that they didn't push, but back then, maybe that was what was expected. I don't know.
Yeah, good point.
But Chief Hillius also noted something hopeful. Back in 1959, detectives had sent Mabel's clothing to the lab for analysis. They sent it to a lab in Harrisburg. They were able to find several strands of hair they believed belonged to a male, and they also lifted a partial fingerprint from what was likely the plastic button on her coat. With modern technology and forensic advances, Stephen believes there's still a possibility of identifying the killer even decades later. Even if he's not alive, they can still figure out who had done it.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that lately with 23andMe and Ancestry.com and everybody doing their DNA profiles, that a lot of these old cases are being solved because of that, because of familial DNA. And regardless of whether or not the perpetrator is still alive, it's still closure and resolution, I think, is the better word for the families.
Yes, and they deserve that. It has been a
Yep.
long time coming. We're coming up on 7 decades. That's a long time. If you do have any information regarding the burglary and murder of Mabel Kretshmar, you can call Percy Police at 215-257-6876. Using Crime Watcher's anonymous telephone tip line at 267-517-0099. You can email the Percy Police Department at info@percypd.org. Calling the Dublin Barracks of the PA State Police at 215-249-9191, or you can submit a tip on the Crime Watch website directly. On the website of Crime Watchers and the page dedicated to Mabel, it says, quote, "We never met Mabel Kretshmar, but we are still thinking of her. We are here to listen," end quote. With that is the end of our episode. If you have any comments, you want to talk more about it, you know where to find us. And with that, we hope you are safe during all these snowstorms and have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye. That's all we have for this episode of the Keystone Cold Cases podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and please consider leaving us a review wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to find out more about the podcast, the host, and the cases we cover, or if you want to suggest a case, please visit us at kccpod.com or send us an email at keystonecoldcases@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook at Keystone Cold Cases and on Instagram and TikTok at KCCPod. Follow us on YouTube at Keystone Cold Cases. Please remember never to reach out to family or friends of the victims, only to law enforcement if you have any tips. This episode was researched and hosted by me, Chelsea. Find all of our sources, social info, and contact information at kccpod.com. Theme music by Darren Makins and production assistance from Shannon Biggle. Join us again next week for another case to sleuth out to.